Hakadosh Boker Or Shavua Tov Masechet Gittin Daf Mem Amud Aleph 40a1. But we're just going to start on a new topic, which is basically on 39b, the last line, right, where it says Amar Bizera, Amar Bi Chanina, Amar Ravashi, Amar Rabbi. Says Bizera, name Rabbi Chanina, name Ravashi, name Rabbi. Eved Shenasa Bat Chodim Bifnei Rabo. Imagine you have an Eved Kenani, right? Remember, Eved Kenani, not an Eved Ivrit. Eved Kenani. That he comes and he gets married to a normal woman in front of his master. Normal woman means a regular bat chorim, regular woman, not a slave, no nothing. He goes out to freedom. Why? Because basically, if he was still a slave, the master wouldn't have just come and just let him get married to whoever it was, unless it was the master that was going to approve it. So if the master kept quiet, it means that obviously he was freed. Elmaleh, Rabbi Yochanan says Rabbi Yochanan to Rabbi Zera, Kol kach yesh biyadecha. You have such a big chidush in the name of Rabbi. V'ani shoneh, but I taught in a braita, hakotev shtar erusin. If you're going to write a shtar erusin, meaning like this, nowadays we don't usually do it with shtar. We say it with kesef, but you say it. You say hareat mekudesh li b'tabat zo kedot mekdam moshav Yisrael, right? And if you have people there in the crowd that they don't understand what you just said, they'll answer you amen. Right? Because they don't understand what you just said. But it just means basically that you're going to come and you're going to be betrothed to me. Right? Fine. In the olden days, they would even write that down in a document. It's called a shtar erusin, which means that they're going to write in the document, Harea mekudesh li, you're going to be married to me, but on a document. That's a shtar. So if somebody comes and he writes a shtar erusin, leshivchato, right, to his maidservant, and then he gave it to her l'shem kiddushin, Rabbi Meir Omer, right? Rabbi Meir comes and he says, Mekudeshet. He's going to be married, right? Why? Because obviously it comes out that in order for the Kiddushin to be Chal, in order for the Kiddushin to take into effect, she had to be a free woman. But Chachamim says, Ena Mekudeshet. She's not Mekudesh, she's not married, right? Why? Because a person could act with a slave as if they're free, right? And therefore it's not a proof that really be'emet they're free. She's still a chazakah, that she's a shivcha. So therefore it comes out that according to Chachamim, even if the master himself did something to show ke'ilu that she's freed, she's still not freed. So koshken, if the servant did it to himself, meaning like this, one more time. Here, the master himself came and wrote to his own maidservant, you're married to me. Now we know that a person can get married to a shivcha. Right? So therefore, if he wrote it to his own maidservant, I'm going to say that he probably freed her. Says Rabbi Meir, that's true. That's the way it is. Says Chachamim, no, it doesn't work. Why? Because a person would act sometimes with his maidservant or with his slave, ki'ilu they're free, even though they're not free. So says the Rabbi Yochanan, Kal v'chomer, if the master sometimes will act with the slave in a certain way, illustrating that he's going to be free, and he's still not free.
Slave, surely.
Right? So then you're the slave himself that does it to himself, that he goes and he gets married to somebody. That doesn't show that he's free. It doesn't show that he's free. So says the Gemara, no, 1 second. Maybe the words of Rabbi are Kida Amar Rabba Barav Shila, like Rabba Barav Shila. What happens if an Eved Kenani comes and he puts on tefillin?
Right in front of his master.
Right in front of his master. He comes and he puts on tefillin. So what happens? He goes al lecherut. And therefore, right, when an Eved comes and he puts it on, it's a proof that he went free. Right? Now, if the master himself put him on tefillin, that's a proof that he freed him, right? So, but if he just kept quiet at the action of the slave, that's not a raya. Why? Because technically speaking, maybe the master, he's very, like he's a good guy. He's not going to come and start to pound there. So, okay, the slave comes, puts on tefillin. He kept quiet. That's not a proof that he didn't. But if right now he comes and it's the master that's putting on tefillin, that's a real proof that he actually freed him. What happens right now is that if the master got married to somebody else, meaning like this, in both cases, the master could come and act with his slave like a free man. And it's not a proof. Here, though, what happens if the master got married to another woman? Just like the master comes and puts him on tefillin. So just like if the master puts him on tefillin, he's considered a free man, right? But not if he puts it on himself. But if the master puts him on tefillin, he's considered a free man. So too, if the master gets married to somebody else, to a free woman, so he's considered a free man. So ask the Gemara, Umi kamide de lavde lo ma'aval leisura ve'iu avad isura. Does it make sense, right? Does there exist such a concept that for the slave, the master is not going to come and do an avirah, and he's not going to make her get married to a bat chorin if he didn't actually come and get her free, and now he himself is going to do an isur and get married to a shifcha, even though she's not freed? Which means like this. What is the logic? The logic is like this. The master comes and got her married to a free woman or to a free man, whichever one the case was, whether it's a slave or an maidservant, right? What do we say? That for sure he freed the slave. Why? Because we know it's an isur. It's a sur. So for sure, the master is not going to do an isur of getting married the slave or maidservant to the other slave, meaning to a free man or a free woman. So for sure he freed him. So one second, what was the other case? The other case was he himself gave a document of marriage to his own maidservant. So he's not going to make somebody else sin, but he himself is going to sin? That he's getting married to his own shifcha, to his own maidservant without freeing her? How does that make sense? Obviously he freed her. So answers the Gemara, right? He says, you're right. Because of that, we're going to have to explain it a little bit differently. Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak, says of Nachman bar Yitzchak, even the Chachamim are going to agree that if the master comes and he says, that for sure the master freed her. It's important. Hey, he's not going to do an isur, but he's going to get married to a maidservant. I say he's the master. He should free her and get married to a free woman. When's he going to come and start getting married to a maidservant? What is the machloka between Chachamim and Rabbi Meir? He says the Amarla. He came and he told her that what happened is that this document is the same document which is going to free you and marry you to me. That's what it is. The same emancipation letter, the same document which is going to free you, right? A letter of freedom, and get you married to me as well. So he says, Rabbi Meir savar yesh balashon hazeh. Rabbi Meir holds that when you come and you write in a shtar esfinarea mekudesheli, there that's enough also the shon shechrur. It's like I freed you as well. Because the kavanah is keilu that you should be fitting to be betrothed. You should be fitting to get married. And therefore, the same document is basically an emancipation letter, a letter to free you, with the same document also using to get married to you. For the Banan Savra, but the rabbis hold, no, it's only Kiddushin. There's no written anywhere that you're going to become free. So if it's not written explicitly that you're going to become free, what do I care that I'm giving you a document that you're going to become married to me? It doesn't chal. It doesn't.
The document
it doesn't
said you are hereby freed and going to marry me.
No, it does not. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, says Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Eved sheniach tefillin bifnei rabo yatza lecherut. So we mentioned this already before, that if an Eved puts on tefillin in front of his master, he goes out free. So meitvei, right? Why? Because ki'ilu, by putting on tefillin, he's showing that he's a free man. Because remember, he's not chayav in tefillin, and if he's putting on tefillin, he's showing ki'ilu that I'm not, you're not my master. You free me, so for sure you free me. So meitvei, they're going to ask a question, lavai menu rabo, right? What happens right now if the master borrows money from the servant? Or his master made him into an apotupos. Right, so one more time. He borrowed money from his slave. His master made him like a manager over properties, right? Or heniach, like a guarantor type of a thing. Or he placed on tefillin in front of his master. Or they called him up to the Torah. And he read 3 psukim, meaning that an Eved is not allowed to get up to the Torah. An Eved is not counted as minyan. An Eved is right? Yeah, exactly. So he says, so now, and the master saw this, and he did a rebuke. So I'm going to say, obviously, for sure he was freed. But, says the halacha, so in all these cases, one more time, you just saw the master borrow money from the slave. You just saw that the master appointed him as a trustee or
administrator.
An administrator, right? Of his right, like the manager of his properties. You just saw that he put on tefillin in front. You just saw that he got an aliyah and he read 3 psukim. Nada. It's still nothing. He's not a free man. So answers the Gemara. Amar Rabbi bar Rav Shila keshraboi nichvat. No, if If the master was the one that put on tefillin on him, then he is a free man. If he puts it on him himself, no. Okay? So, Kiyata Rav Dimi Rav Yochanan, when Rav Dimi came, right, from Bavel, he said in the name of Rav Yochanan, מי שאמר בשעת מיתתו פלונית שפחתי על השתעבדו בה לאחר מותי, כופין את היורשים וכותבים לה גט שחרור. Imagine right now, somebody is on his deathbed, and he comes and he says, right, פלונית שפחתי, Miss so-and-so, his maidservant, his inheritors should not subjugate her, they should not make her into a shivcha anymore, right, after his death. Meaning, basically, he's like, he doesn't free her now, but he's just saying that his children or his, whoever it is, his heirs, cannot come and subjugate his maidservant. Kofinat Yorshim are going to force, right, the Yorshim, the inheritors, to come, and they have to write to get shichur. Okay, that means basically he understood that when it says, that means Rabbi Yochanan understood that when he used the terminology alish tabduba, which means don't subjugate her, don't make her, right, work, it means kilu, that she's freed. Okay? Samru lefanav, they said in front of Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yami V'Ravasi, right? Rabbi, iyata modeh shebanei avadim. So imagine Rabbi Yami Rabbi said in front of Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi, right? Kilu, our master, our Rabbi, you're not going to agree that her slaves are still avadim, which means ali shtabduba is not a shona shichrur and not a fker. It's not to get free. It's not a freedom or of making them ownerless. It's a tzivui. Don't make her work too much. So therefore, since she's still a kinyan mamon, she's still monetary acquisition. Her children are still going to be avadim for anything. Which means basically they're coming and they're telling the rabbi, I thought it just means don't make her work too much. Meaning, okay, she's still a shivcha, but don't come and make her work like a dog.
But they want more slaves out of her.
Right? Well, yes, but that means she could continue having children. Those children are slaves. But the question though was that, don't you agree that the children are going to be slaves? Meaning that he didn't actually free her, because if he freed her, those children are not slaves. So, Kiyata, Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda came to Bavel. He said in the name of Yochanan, a person comes and he says, right, that this maidservant, she did good things to me. She did korat ruach. Korat ruach means she made me calm. She made me good. She made me at peace. So therefore, they should make her at peace. They force the Yoshim to come and to do her korat ruach. So therefore, they have to come and they have to free her. My time, what's the reasoning? Mitzvah lekayim divrei hamet. It's a mitzvah to fulfill the words of the deceased, which means the fact that he comes and he says this, so therefore they're obligated to fulfill his words. So Amar Meimar says, Hamafkid avdo, even if you made him owner of it, he has nothing what to do anymore. Why? Meaning he doesn't have a remedy, right? That means why? Because even a get shichur doesn't help anymore. My time I was reasoning. Kufei lo kanile, but the second that he freed him, he has no ownership over the guy. So he can't give him a get shichur, like an emancipation letter. Isura, but he's got an isura that he's still an eved. The isura lomatzi makle. Now he cannot come and he cannot acquire it to him. Remember, we learned this already. So Elmaleh Ravashi Lamimar says Ravashi Tamimar. Ve'amarula Ula says Amar Yochanan Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia bar Avin, right, in the name of Rav. Echadze ve'echadze. It doesn't matter whether the eved came and the master got him married off, or the master made him ekdesh. You remember the case? This was a few days ago, where basically the master consecrated him, or the master came and he freed him. He not freed him, he made him ownerless, hefker. Okay, so in both cases, yatzal lecherut, it's a get shichrur. He goes free and he needs a get shichrur. So there is a takana with a get shichrur. You just told me that the second that he comes and he made him hefker, there's no remedy to him. Why? It doesn't help to give him a letter of freedom.
Give him the emancipation letter. He's free.
He's master.
Yeah, but right? Once he's free.
Well, that's what he's going to say now. So Elmaleh tzarich, he needs a letter of freedom. Ve'en lo takana, but it doesn't help, because once he was made ownerless, who's going to give him that get shichrur? Right? Basically, who's going to give him that? And he's part not connected anymore. So therefore, that's it. Ika damni. There are those that say they have to change the version. Remember, an ika damni means that there are those that say, which means that there was another version to what we just said. Amar Meimar says, Hamafkid avdo v'met. Imagine somebody makes his servant, right, hefker, and then he dies. The Eved has no remedy. My time, what's the reasoning? Kufelo kanele, because remember, he already made him ownerless. So if he made him ownerless, his body is not acquired to that person anymore. Isur, but he still's got a kinyan isur. Because remember, every slave has two parts to him. There's the monetary acquisition, he's like a property. And number two, isur, he's an eved, so he can't get married to anybody else. So even if you're going to tell me that you got rid of the monetary acquisition because he made him free, right? Because he made him ownerless, basically, for 1 second. But at the end of the day, he's still got the isur here. The isura livre lomori. Now, a person cannot inherit to his son an isur. A person could inherit to his son a monetary acquisition, but not some type of a form of an isur that now his son could come and he could actually, 1 minute, right, and actually free him up. So says Ravashi, Elmaleh Ravashi, says Ravashi Tameiman, Va'aki Rav Dimi Amar Yochanan, but when Rav Dimi came, he said this in the name of Yochanan. So therefore you see from here that even though there was a kinyan mamon, right, through the command of the father, right, he says the children are able to do it, and they could write a get shichrur, meaning the children could come and write this document to free up the slave. Not like what you just said. So he says that Rav Dimi ta'utahi, you're right. Rav Dimi was a mistake. Meaning they're not obligated to free him. And the reason why is because these words in the name of Yochanan was a mistake, and therefore you can't come and you can't start asking questions on. Elmaleh, Ravashi comes and he tells Tomimar, "My ta'uta. What's a mistake exactly? Delo amra b'lashon shichur, that the master did not say in a lashon that it was like to free her up. Ha amra b'lashon shichur. If he did say arei bachorim, hachanami. Imagine right now, Rabbi Yami and Rabbi Yassi, are they going to come and they're going to force the inheritors to give her a get shichrur if he comes and he says hareyat batchorim, right? Which means that it's mashma. That means basically, why is it that they didn't force the master to come, not the master, the inheritors to come and to free her up? Because he didn't actually use the terminology of freedom. He just says, listen, she did good things to me, do good things to her. She don't subjugate her too much. But he didn't actually come and say, you're a free woman. So if he didn't actually use those words, that's why they're saying, you know what? So the inheritors don't have to free her. Remember, by an Eved Kenani or a Shivcha Kenanit, right? There's a Leolam Bahem Tavodu. For eternity, you're supposed to make them work. And if you're going to come and you're going to free them, you are Oved, you transgress a positive commandment of the Torah. And that's why we said that the Baalei Batim, the rich people, sometimes they become poor because they come and they start freeing their slaves when they're not supposed to. So Elmaleh comes and he says, Ana Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda sfirali. I hold like Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda in the name of Rav Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan did not say exactly like what Rav Dimi said, and he didn't actually ask this entire thing, but rather Rabbi Yochanan came and he said that when he says, Yaseh la korat ruach, we do force him to come and do the korat ruach. And in this case, for sure, he was not mafia the kinyan mamon, but he just said it depends on them, right? And they are the ones that they get the money, whether money and isurim, and therefore there's a mitzvah to be mekayem dvarav, and therefore to free her. But hifkia et kinyan mamon, once he comes and he got rid of the money aspect from himself, they can't do anything. Just like we mentioned before, meaning that the second that the person himself is the owner gets rid of the money aspect from a slave, there's no way you can do anything. Because now he can't give a get because it's not his money, and he can't. So what are you going to do? Fine, a story. How this karta de avde? There was a place of avadim kenanim that was owned by a Jew. So imagine there was a Jew that he was the owner of a whole bunch of avadim kenanim. That was sold, right, to a goy. Okay, now we know that if somebody sells an eved, his eved, to a oved kochavim, he goes out free because it's like a knas, right? That basically, because it's not going to come back to him. So if it was like a penalty, a fine that we give them, there's going to be a Mishnah later on in 43b, where the Mishnah says if you sell your eved kenani to a goy, the eved goes out free, right? Afterwards, kalu marvata batre. The owners of the Kochavim, they died. So the Avadim, they came in front of Ravina and they wanted a permission to get married to a Bat Yisrael. Amar lehu, he went, Ravina told them, Zilu ahadru abnei marvata kamayim, right? Go get one of the owners that you had, right? So he says, V'yichtevhu lecha lechu gita decheruta. So that's why they could write for you guys a get shichrur, right? They could write for you a liberation, a emancipation letter, a letter of freedom. Okay, which means that even though there was a knas of chachamim to take away the money, they still need to get shechur.
They're all dead, the sons.
Exactly. So therefore, that means you see from here that even though they died and they are left over in front of the Yorshim, that means there's only inheritors now. Because those people, they died. So there's only inheritors.
But like who? Uncles, aunts?
Anybody.
Okay.
It could be grandchildren, it could be anybody. What happens? They still need to get shichrur from the Yorshim. So Amru le Rabbanan le Ravina, said the rabbis to Ravina, remember 1 second, but I thought it says Mafkid of the Umet, there's no takana. So what does it help now to get an emancipation letter? To get a letter of shichrur from the Yorshim? They're already freed. And what does it help? It doesn't help. We just said that it doesn't help. Amar lehu, he told them, Ana kravdimi sila, I hold a kravdimi. Remember, Ravdimi came and he said that they forced them to come and that even though the master came and he freed them of money and they're still sued, you could still write them get shichrur. So they told them, they told them Ravdimi was a taut, was a mistake. Amar lehu, he told them, my tauta, what was a mistake? They didn't say that they're free. If it did say that he's free, everyone agrees. So the halacha is kravina, that technically speaking, they could still write a get shichrur. Nekuda. So that means if somebody's going to ask you, what's halacha? Even though you came and you made them ownerless, they still come and they write a get shichrur, and it helps. Okay, that means they could still write an emancipation letter, a letter of freedom, and it's going to help. Next story. Hau avda de beitrei. There was a slave that belonged to two partners. So one of them came and he said, you know what? You're a free man. The guy was mamash, he worked out. He said, you know what? You're a free man. Amad Idach, the other one said, Hashta shame berabanan. Wow. Now the rabbis are going to hear. And then they're going to make me lose everything. Azala kneye libno katan. What did he do? He pulled a fast one. He went and he acquired the eved to his younger child. Now, a younger child, Betin are not going to force. Exactly. So the Betin are not going to come and force the child to free him up. So Shalcha Rav Yosef read the Rava lekamidur Papa. So they sent the question. Rav Yosef read the Rava in front of Rav Papa. So Rav Papa comes and he sent him an answer. Ka'asher asa ken ye'aselo gemulo yashiv lo berosho. Right? What does that mean? This is a pasuk in Ovadia. Right? Ka'asher asa, just like he did, so you should do to him. You should pay him back on his head. Meaning whatever he just did, do it to him. We know that the child loves money. Put him in a potupus, right? That basically he's going to pay the yeled just like it is in the shul. What are we going to do? We're going to put an administrator for the child, not the father, because the father was trying to pull a fast one. So we're going to appoint an administrator for the child. Children, they love money. Correct or not? Children, they love money. Mula talks. Yeah, money talks. So what happens?
Coins.
Yeah, coins. Yeah, so what happens? Children, they love money because they know that with money, they can buy candies, they can buy toys. They love it. So what happens, right? What happens is that we're going to come and we're going to say that we're going to put an apotropos, right? And then they're going to come and give to the child, meaning like to the apotropos, the value of the other half. And then what happens is that now he's going to become a completely free man. Okay? Mema Mubet, 40b. Umekarkesh lezuze. We're going to start putting the money, showing the money, a little bit of money in front of him. And then he's going to come and he's going to do it. And then we're going to write it on his name, meaning that we are going as the they're going to be mefateh the yeled, since the child likes money, they're seducing basically the child to come and to free the slave. Again, the child will still get the portion. He's still going to get the 50% of the value of the eved. It's not like you're coming and you're buying the eved for $2 instead of $1,000. No. The eved has to pay is 50%. But they're basically doing it in a way that the child is going to want to do it, and the Betin are going to allow that. Right? Why? Because since the father acted improperly, that's what they went and they said this. Okay? So Tanu Rabbanan, we're going to learn a Braita. Haomer asiti ploni avdi ben chorin. If a person comes and he says that I made my servant ben chorin, or ploni avdi asui ben chorin, he's made into a ben chorin, or he is a ben chorin, haro ben chorin. Right? That means any of these languages help, and terminologies, they help, right? Because basically what we're trying to say is that they're all mashma, they all imply that he was a free man now. Okay? E'esenu ben chorim, right? But what happens if he says, I'm going to make him a ben chorim? I'm going to make him into a free man. So Rabbi says, kana, he acquires himself, right? The Chachamim say, no, kana, he doesn't acquire himself. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's just mashma that he's going to make him that. But he didn't say that he's free now. If I'm going to come and I'm going to say, I'm going to make you free. Okay, I'm going to make you free. But maybe it's in 10 years. Maybe it's in 5 years. Maybe it's tomorrow. I didn't say. I'm going to make it. Yeah, Bezat Hashem, I'll give it to you. But whoever said now. So that's why the Chachamim come and say, you didn't acquire yourself yet. But I didn't say when. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, now all these things were on documents. We weren't talking about that it was done orally. Right? We're talking about documents because saying it cannot uproot even a kinyan mamon, and he could always retract, which is very interesting. Meaning, if I come and I say it, it's not enough. And a get shichrur has to be written, just like a get of a woman has to be written. It's not enough for him to say, I'm divorcing you, or you're divorced. That doesn't help. Or you're free to marry whoever you want. It doesn't help. You have to give a get. A get is something which is a document which is written. So to hear the emancipation letter, this letter of freedom, has to be something written. Okay? Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita, Haomer natati sadeh ploni leploni, netuna leploni, areu shelo, arei shelo, arei shelo. So if a person comes and he says that I gave this field to this person, or it's given to this person, or belongs to him, in any of these languages, it belongs to him. Etenena leploni, if I'm gonna give it to this person, Rabbi Meir says he acquires it, right? It's the same machlok. No, before it was Rabbi. Now it's Rabbi Meir. And the rabbis, Chachamim, the same like last time, say, no, he doesn't acquire it. Why? Okay, so I'm going to give it to him later on. Whoever said now, so I'll give it to him later on. Says Rabbi Yochanan, the exact same yisod also. Rabbi Yochanan, it says, Vekulan bishtar. Right? He comes and he says, everything is talking about bishtar. Ma kavana bishtar? Everything's talking about in the document. Right? It cannot be just some about pay orally. Because if it's going to be orally is nothing. It's worth nothing. He can retract. It has to mean that he's writing it down in a document. If there's no document, wallo. Taru Rabbanan, right? Another braita. Haomer asiti ploni avdi ben chorim. If a person comes and he says, I made my servant, this ploni, right? My servant's free. Vehu omer, and he says, lo asani. The servant says, what are you talking about? You didn't make me free. Chayshinan, we're going to suspect, maybe he did it through somebody else. Right? And therefore, that's why the servant didn't know anything about it. Okay? But if he says, Katavti v'natati lo, lo katav li v'lo natani. But if he comes and he says, no, but I wrote him on a freedom letter, right? And I gave it to him. And the other guy says, the servant says, what are you talking about? You didn't write anything. You didn't give anything to me. So the Odat Baldin, meaning the actual, that admittance of the slave by saying that I didn't receive anything, that's like 100 witnesses saying that he didn't get it, and therefore he's not going to be free. If I come and I say that I gave this field to this person, and he says, no, he didn't give it to me. So again, we're going to suspect maybe it was done through a third party. But if he says I wrote it to him and I gave it to him, and he says no, the same thing. The admittance of the person is like 100 witnesses. When somebody comes and he says I wrote it for him and I gave it to him, and the receiver says, he didn't write anything, give it to me. Who eats the fruits? Because at the end of the day, the one that's giving it is saying it belongs to him. The receiver says, I didn't receive anything. So who eats the fruits now in between? So says Rav Chasta, the one that's giving it over, he's the one that eats the fruits. Because since the other one has admitted that he didn't receive anything, so the one that's giving, he's the one that eats the fruits. But Rabbi says, no, they give it to a third person until we find out what happens. Meaning that they're going to give it to a third person, they're going to take the value, and then that money is going to wait until they find out be'emet who does it belong to. Says the Gemara, ve'la pliga, but there's no machloka really between them. Ha be'aba, ve'ha bivra. The dinar of Chasta is talking about the actual mekabel atzmo. If he's the one that's still alive, and he's saying, I don't know that I, like, for example, he's saying, Yadul Vadai, that I didn't receive anything, so that Baldin is like Me'adim, and therefore, it goes to the one that gave it over, right? I mean, the original owner. But if it's talking about Rabba, we're talking about the son, meaning the one that received it, he died. And the son says, right, that the one that gave it over never owed her anything, said, give anything to my father. So for even though the son says, I don't know that my father received it, maybe we could say, maybe he doesn't know 100%. Maybe the father did receive some type of a letter of freedom or a letter of something. He doesn't know exactly what happened. So because he doesn't know exactly what happened, that's why we say, give it to a third party, and the third party are going to be taking care of it. Okay? Until here, we're clear? Okay, Mishnah. Mishnah Memubet, 40b, the Mishnah. Eved shesaor rabo putiki la'acherim. If an Eved that his master made him a putiki to other people, which means the Adon came, the master came, and he lent out money. And what happened, he borrowed money, and he designated the Eved to the Malveh, that if he doesn't pay back the money, so therefore he's going to collect the Eved. Right? So imagine, I've got a slave, I'm using him as a collateral. I come to Richard, lend me money. Okay, what are you going to give me? Instead of giving you my watch, you know what? Here's my slave. He's my collateral. Okay? The shichrero. Now what happens is afterwards, after doing this, I freed my slave. I freed him. Yeah, what happens? Shurat adin en eved chayav klum. The eved is not chayav anything, right?
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Here he comes and he says, right? The Gemara is going to explain what does it mean. The eved is not chayav. The eved didn't say anything, right? But because we're going to come and we're going to, right, make him into a free man. And he's going to write a document on his money. Okay? The Shvag Omer, comes and he says, he doesn't write the shtar chov, ela meshachrer. All he has to do is, right, he just frees him. Right? And he's the one that has to pay the value of the slave. Let's see the Gemara. One second before asking. Okay? So let's see. Says the Gemara. Evet shasaor rabo putiki v'shichrero. Says the Gemara, mi shichrero. Who freed him? One more time. I have an Eved. I borrow money from Richard. I tell Richard, my Eved is a collateral. He's like the guarantee that if I don't pay, you're taking my slave. And now we made him free. Who was the one that made him free? Says the Gemara, mi mishachrero. Amar Rav says, the first owner, which is me. Right? Shurat adin en Eved chayav klum lerabo sheni. What does that mean? Meaning that Shurat adin, the slave, owes nothing to the next master, to Richard. Kiderava like Rava. Because Amar Rava says, Hekdesh, Chametz v'shichrur, mafkin mideh shibur. If somebody comes and he consecrates something, which is Hekdesh, Chametz. So Chametz is something that becomes Chametz on Pesach. Or shichrur, freeing someone, takes away from a lien. Meaning, if I come and I had my slave, or lavdavka slave, let's say it's a watch.
No,
right?
I have personal property is different. It's considered already yours.
1 minute. Right? And what happened is that he comes and he consecrated it. So this aputiki, right, was a chefetz. It could be a watch. It could be anything. Look in your footnote. Right? It could be it's an item. So this item was a guarantee, but I didn't actually give it to Richard now. And I come and I consecrated it. I made it ekdesh. All of a sudden now it's not an aputiki anymore. I just took it out of its lien. The same halacha applies to chametz. Right? And all of a sudden, it comes Pesach. And now it becomes a Surbana. The same thing. So now it's taken out of a lien anymore. Because now it's a Surbana, that's it. Or, right, if he comes and he frees. So there's Hekdesh, Chametz, and freeing something. So this freeing of something was our case. He basically comes and he made his servant free. So in all these three cases, he basically uprooted the lien. He took away the lien from it. And the reason why is because since now the goof of the Eved is not acquired to the Malveh, it was only a she'abud to collect the money. And therefore he could come and he could free him. And once he frees him, now there's nothing left. So that's it. So says the Gemara, Ela mipnei tikun haolam, but because of tikun haolam, Shema yimtzeinu b'shuk, maybe he's going to find him in the marketplace. V'yomar lo, and he's going to tell him, Memalef Amud Aleph on the top, he's going to tell him 41a on the top, Avdiata, you're my slave. And then kofin et rabo sheni v'oseber. So therefore, we're like this. What's going to happen? Really, be'emet, once this first master, which is me, I freed him. That's it. He's done. But there's tikkun olam. What is tikkun olam? Imagine right now, he's going to come and see him in the street, and he's going to say, "You're my slave." People are going to say, "Wow, he's a slave. That means all his children are slaves." But he just got married to a bat chorim. What's going on? It's going to be a big balagan, and his children are psulim. So because of that, we force a second master to come and to make him free as well. V'kotev eved shtar al damav. Now the eved will come and will write Hashtar, that he has to pay
Explain
the
that to
value.
me. Explain that.
That
to me.
means basically now he has to pay,
Why?
right?
Well,
Why? He currently says, really, be'emet, the Eved is not chayav to the malveh anything, right? Because it was completely free. But since he's benefiting from the fact that he now gets a get shichrun, so the rabbis instituted, fine, you're benefiting that now the guy's not going to make you pasul or your children pasulim. So now you also make him benefit as well. So now you have to pay him your money. Okay, that's because it's tikkun haolam. One more time, but that's tikkun haolam.